Wish I had the whole 3 minutes to tell of my gratitude to the people who have stood up to make the world a better place. Sam, who has been the Samaritan who walked down the road and found us in the ditch and stopped to help us stop suffering and find a way out of that ditch when the Pharisees marched on by. I need to tell my story quickly, so there will only be pieces of it. At age 11, my mom had met a man who kidnapped me and assaulted me, kidnapped me and took me somewhere and assaulted me. And when I got back home, I was terrified. Well, it wasn't that much. I was threatened not to tell anyone, so I didn't, but it wasn't that much longer. My mom married him, so I lived with him. I lived in fear and terror my whole life, but the bishop's interviews that I would be going to church to be at a young women's event and be dragged out of class and taken alone and with a man in the room that I did not know. Even if I knew him, I was terrified. I knew what it meant to go behind a closed door with a man. I did not want to go. But I wasn't asked if I wanted to go. I was taken, and I was questioned about sexual matters, answered honestly, and was shamed. Shame on top of shame, and blame on top of blame. Then the probing questions even made it worse. As I got older, I was approached after I finally told my mom what was going on. The bishop took me in his office and said, "We don't like to break up families, so your stepfather's agreed to go to church every Sunday. We want you to try harder to get along." So I took that up on my 14-year-old shoulders to do, and I went to church as much as I could, and I bore up more of the blame and more of the shame, and I continued to try harder. By the time I was like a young adult, I was taken in with the bishop, and he was thinking about me maybe going on a mission, so he said, "You have to confess all your sins." And I confessed all my sins to him, which read like a long story, and found out I had, with probing questions, that I had had an abortion at age 16. They'd taken me, just told me it was seeds, took it out, and he proceeded for an hour and a half to tell me that I was a murderer, and I didn't seem to understand that, and that what I had done was worse than any of the sexual sins, and that God might never forgive me. I wouldn't know till the next life if I'd been forgiven, and the church might forgive me, but they didn't know about if God would forgive me. So I spent the next decades feeling utterly worthless, trying to raise children, trying to raise my eyes and be a happy, confident person like I used to be. And I don't know how much longer I have, but I just want to say that taking children behind closed doors, number one, is a terrible practice. You don't know their background. You don't know what they've been through. It's not a good place for a child to be, any child, even if they haven't been hurt. They can be hurt there. And then sexually explicit questions destroyed me. And then judging my worthiness finished me off. And I just want to say that all of the abuse I experienced at home, I still believed I was a good person. I still got out of that house and was going to be okay until I was taken and told I was a murderer, and I was therefore no more, not even a good person. So I had nothing left until I saw this great example of these few people, Sam being the shining star, that showed me what love really is, and I started to see what love looks like. Thank you, Sam, for showing me what love looks like. I love you.